What is life like for Savannah Guthrie and the family right now? Not to have any answers, not to have much interaction with authorities. Very few people would know what that's like. I have a very special guest on the show today to share his perspective of this world of national attention on a missing persons case. I have Joe Petito. He is the father of once missing Gabby Petito. It's a case that dominated the headlines. And he's opening up about his thoughts on this case for the very first time.
We miss her. We miss her a lot. You know, she's the light. So many people have seen Gabby's story or heard Gabby's story. I mean, her Moab videos being used in all police academies around the nation, from what I understand, you know what I mean, to teach about the domestic violence portion of their job. So when you really put that into perspective of how impactful, our daughter has been, it's humbling.
In this episode, I asked Joe what it's like working with authorities and how much information is shared, how much they control and allow you to share as the family of the missing person. I also asked him if he's been in touch with Savannah, his message and advice for the family navigating through this difficult time, and his thoughts on the headlines that the sheriff is no longer in direct communication with Savannah or her family. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Now, the case of missing Nancy Guthrie. All right, here to break it down, very special guest, friend of the program. We have Vice President of Gabby Petito Foundation, father of three, and a friend that I've come to know over the past couple of years. You're going to see him at CrimeCon. This is Joe Petito. Nice to see you.
You too, Matt. How you doing?
Good. So, what's in the headlines right now and what has been, quite frankly, since February is this, Savannah Guthrie's mom missing, Nancy Guthrie, in the middle of the night. And, I wanted to talk to you because you're part of that club that really no one wants to be a part of a missing persons case, and one that is just national and viral. So I want to get your take on all of that. But, have you been in contact with Savannah or that family after this happened? I know that you may have crossed paths in your journey as well.
I haven't been, and to be honest, I really wanted to give them their space. You know what I mean? We have, I guess, mutual connects, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I gave, our family's best wishes to hers, but I haven't. And to be honest, when she's ready, if she wanted to talk to us, I'd be more than willing. You know what I mean? But it's such a hard world to navigate, and understanding it and paying attention to it. Really, you learn a lot of stuff, and you find out what things that you want to help. So if she does go down that path, I'd love to do things together.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about what it's like on the other side from what we don't see. And so when you first learned about this case, and then, you're hearing the details about the sheriff is involved with the FBI, obviously, but it's no longer the sheriff that is in contact with the family. What was your reaction to that?
So I read, I understand when I read stuff, sometimes it's not as accurate as you would want it to be, right? So I did read some things where there was a delay in how some evidence got to the FBI and stuff like that. And the one thing that we didn't experience was the ego that comes with, different divisions of law enforcement, with the FBI and local police and whatnot. And the way I read it, it seems to be like there's a possibility that sometimes maybe the ego of the sheriff played a little bit, in part on how long it took for evidence to get there. And I'll tell you, if that did transpire, he shouldn't be wearing that badge, because the victim comes first. And if that wasn't taking place, then you shouldn't be wearing the badge, because you put that badge on to protect other people.
When the FBI is also involved in all of this, were they involved in your daughter's case? I mean, are they naturally the direct line of contact with the family, or what did you experience?
So it was actually a little bit of both with us, to be honest with you. And that was the FBI took, I don't want to say the lead, you know what I mean? But they have a vast amount of resources that local police departments don't have. You know what I mean? So if there was evidence that was needed to be collected, why put that on the local police when you have Quantico and their division of, ridiculous amounts of money that they can just put things into? So no, we didn't have any of that. And if there was need for something like that, they should have used it in the right way. And again, from what I read, I just don't see that was happening at the time, and probably caused more delays than should have.
So in your experience, what was it like to be at the center of this national missing persons case? Your daughter, Gabby, was missing. What was that like in the initial days and weeks when she was missing for you? I mean, there's media swarming your house. Take me back to that and your point of view.
Listen, when Gabby's Moab stop got out there is when the media really started to pick up. There was media before, don't get me wrong, but that's when it really started to pick up. And it's very difficult because you don't want to, do something or say something or go out and, be contradictive and stuff like that. And you have to mind what you say. And that was difficult for us. I can only imagine what it is for Savannah and her family, because Savannah, she's a public figure. So I can only imagine it's that much worse. You know what I mean? And I will say, for the record, listen, she didn't ask for any of this. Listen, she had a job. She was doing her job. Something horrible happened to her family. Don't put what it is that she did for a living, the reason of, but we don't know that until she's found and that story gets finalized. You won't know. Don't put anything on her. If anything, Nancy's still missing, and that's what matters right now. Keep pushing her story out there, just like any other missing person story that's important. Every story deserves the same attention. So I just want to make sure that gets out there. That she didn't ask for any of this, and it's important that people treat her as such.
The family is victimized in all of this, and unfortunately, your family and her family, no matter what the resolution or if they get answers sooner or later, it's a life sentence.
Because some of the things that you learn the gaps in system, and listen, some of them are, not intentional and stuff like that. And I get it, but there are gaps in the system. You know what I mean? The way, certain people get reported, the time it takes to get that report done, or how long it takes to collect the evidence. I mean, you got stories of Daniel Robinson. I know you remember that story. The father, David Robinson. I mean, he collected evidence that no one wanted. He had in a storage facility for years before even people decided to take a look at it. So when you see stuff like that, you're like, why is it this way? Why some people get help and some don't? And it just seems to be a problem, a lot of the time. And we have some ways to correct that. We're working on it, but one day at a time. Unfortunately, changes like these move slow.
Well, you have a really good heart, and your whole family does. And we're going to talk about your mission statement and how people can get involved and help other families that are dealing with situations, or when they identify that someone might need help, just in general. Talking about being in that moment when, in your case, when your daughter's missing, how much interaction do you have with police? How much is the family aware of? What is that like? I just really wanted your perspective to kind of share with us what the Guthries might be experiencing right now.
So for us, because we were doing a lot of media at the time, because we needed everybody's eyes, right? So it was nonstop, and it was. Let's see, I started at, I think, 4:00 in the morning doing interviews, finished at like probably 1 o'clock in the morning. Then I would go on Reddit and Facebook and I think it was Twitter at the time. I don't know when it changed, and all these, these forums, and, trying to screenshot stuff that we could find out and stuff like that and send it to the FBI. Listen, I'm not saying Savannah's doing that. I wouldn't, it's what we did, you know what I mean? So, but cops and the FBI it was every day, you know what I mean? There was just some feedback. Hey, listen, we're doing this. This is where we're at. Again, sometimes there were some missteps, but, like Gabby's case, every day was something new. You know what I mean? It really played out as a soap opera for the most part when you really look at it as at its entirety. So every day was something else. And, you kind of mind what you have to say, but they really gave us updates, consistently. So.
And I feel like every day is a soap opera in Savannah Guthrie's life too, and unfortunately she's in the type of business where she can't really escape it, and she's like reading the news. And so there's that whole situation with her workplace. But, you know, so how does it work with communication with the family? So were you like the point person with a special assigned FBI agent, and then you disseminated the information, or did they send you guys a group chat? Or take me into your world of desperately wanting information and what it's like. I'm sure that you're just kind of like looking at your phone nonstop. You're making sure it's charged. What is this like for you?
So we actually did group calls, because we were all over the place. You had Jim in Wyoming, me in Florida, Nikki in New York, right? So, and then Tara with me. So what they would do is they would say, hey, listen, we're going to have a call at this point. Someone's going to call you, and we're going to get you all on the line and tell all it, because they don't want that miscommunication, because that's when you play that telephone game. So it really was, we're going to give you all the information. And, I hopefully that happened with Savannah as well. This way she doesn't have to get information that good, bad, or indifferent, didn't matter, and then have to relay that, because that's a lot on somebody to have to relay, right? So I guess the only time someone knew something different was, I guess, when Nikki found out that Brian was home with the van, and then when Gabby was found, Jim knew first, because he was on the ground out there. So he was somewhere, and they came running up to him, and I say the FBI doesn't run like that unless they're chasing somebody. So to run from a parked car to where he was, he's like, they knew there was something going on. So that's the only time. And then Jim had to make that phone call to us.
And when you're making statements to the media and you're sitting down for interviews and stuff, we all saw the interview that Savannah made. To me, it seemed very careful. Of course, she's a wordsmith. She's a journalist by trade. Very unique circumstance, right? But when you were making statements to the media, was it the FBI that was helping you with talking points, or was there any coaching? What is that like for the family?
They actually had a mute button for me. True story, honest to God. Yeah, because I'm the problem, right? Because I don't sugarcoat, I don't waste time, I don't blow smoke, right? So if you're going to ask me my opinion, I'm going to give it to you. You know what I mean? And because I don't have time for it. So they're like, you can't say this, you can't say that. And, when it comes to the case specifics, you can't mention, so that's fine. But other than that, a lot of the questions we were asking was more emotional, you know what I mean? And people like, well, what'd you think of Brian and stuff like that? And we just, at that point, didn't care about Brian, so we would just kind of just glance over those questions anyway. But, I do feel bad because, again, Savannah's in that public space. She is reading the news and stuff like that. And, I just feel like her and the family just got unfair shots, taken at them. And that just sucks.
What was it that you were not able to say?
Just certain things, certain points, you know what I mean? We like with the letter, you know what I mean? The burn after reading stuff, I'm trying to think what were some of the things at the time, some of the stuff with the parents, when Brian went missing and whatnot, even though that was a whole debacle, you know what I mean? So when they classified him as missing, but again, when it came to, that stuff, it is what it is. When we started talking about, once Gabby was found, and we started doing, some of the press about some of the gaps and stuff, where we said everyone deserves the same story. And, it's not just Gabby that deserves that. We were kind of like, you want to keep it, I guess some of the feedback was, we want to keep it towards Gabby and keep it, very vanilla. And I just said, screw it. Listen, you know what, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it now. And we meant what we said. And I think by now people see that we backed it up. So.
Yeah, you're very genuine and very honest. I can vouch for that.
Hence the mute button.
Yeah. When you watch any of this coverage or whatever, quite honestly, you're traumatized for life, and I'm sorry. But when you're watching any of the coverage or anything, has there been anything triggering?
Always. There's always things. We were just talking about this just the other day. It's the irrational things that people do to keep the memory of their loved ones that are gone, still there. So this is going to sound really stupid, but we had a Netflix account, you know what I mean, where Gabby was part of. There was a bundle that we saw online that would lower our costs on certain things. So we're like, all right, let's bundle them together. We got on the line with Netflix. We're like, all right, just merge the accounts. They couldn't do it. So for like months, my wife and I were paying for 2 Netflix accounts. And then we just said, you know what, screw it. We got rid of the bundle because we can't get rid of the Netflix account that has her profile on it. But you can't do it. You know what I mean? So we're just like, screw it. Doesn't matter, you know? And the reason why I say, because, you know, Melissa, my wife doesn't like to waste any money. You know what I mean? So, as a matter of fact, she takes all of it, you know, and she only gives me an allowance. It works that way for us. Trust me, it's important. I'm horrible with it. So for her to be like, hey, listen, you know, we're just going to spend more for the same thing that we're getting because it just doesn't matter. Things like that is what people do. You know, my sister lost her husband, and she still keeps his phone. She still pays for his phone, still listens to his voicemails, you know. So things like that you find yourself doing just to be close to them. And those are things that some people don't really talk about. And you'll find things that connect you, and you're just going to keep it, you know, and it's stuff like that.
Has there been anything triggering in what you've seen in the coverage of this case? Do you think that it's comparable? Do you think that there is more YouTubers and more online people, and is that hurtful to a family?
It can be. Listen, I saw some of the negative things that were said, you know, about Nancy's family or family members and stuff like that. And that's got to be very hurtful because they're going through some crap right now. And then people just compound it, right? And that's not the right time for that, right? So things like that do hurt. Listen, we got it with Gabby. Gabby's a crisis actor. Like, stop. You know,
People
what I mean?
actually said that?
Oh, yeah. Because apparently Gabby did. My wife had some friends that did a video for the Columbine stuff, and you know, she was holding up that sign, "I'm irreplaceable." And I guess people like just ran with, you know, some conspiracy theory, and I like, stop. So I've seen some of that with Savannah's family. Yeah, it is hurtful because you don't have time for that. But you know, is it triggering for us? All missing persons, because it's got to be triggering for other people who don't get the same press. To be honest with you. When you have missing loved ones and you're doing everything you can, you know what I mean? Because there is that hierarchy of missing people, you know what I mean? So you're trying to do whatever you can to find your loved one or get people involved with it. You know, that's some of the things that we talk about is that we talk to a lot of missing person families, and the number one thing they ask for more than anything else is resources. You know, because especially when you're in certain rural areas where they might not have, like Moab's got 19 officers in there. You know what I mean? So when it comes to certain things, it can be a problem. So people ask for resources a lot. And that's one of the things that we're trying to work on. You know, we would like to see all missing person cases moved over to the FBI after 2 weeks, because most people are found right away, whether it be credit cards, social media, you know, facial recognition, whatever processes or equipment that they have. But once 600,000 people go missing every year. On average, there's 25,000 missing person cases, you know, active, right? So out of those active ones, that more than 2 weeks, you really want to have the federal resources involved because, again, you're from Atlanta, but, you know, I grew up on Long Island. You know, I can traverse, you know, 4 or 5 states inside 4 or 5 hours, right? So how fast? Yeah, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut talk. But what about when you start getting into Pennsylvania or Maryland or Virginia or New Hampshire or Vermont and Maine? You know what I mean? Start going up to Maine or even further. Like it doesn't 10 hours from Long Island, I could be up in Canada in a different country. You know what I mean? So, you know, time is of the essence, and you can traverse a lot of lands, you know, fast nowadays. And I think the laws have to catch up with that because now it's interstate. And that's when the FBI does have some jurisdiction. So you can get them involved, and that could be the difference of finding someone or not. So having their resources or access to their resources, you know, can really make the difference. And that's a lot of the stuff that people ask for, and we'd like to see that.
What kind of resources or investigative tactics are you not seeing in the news that you wish was used in this Guthrie case?
Well, it's not specific to Nancy's, you know, case or, you know, or Savannah's family. It's more for the generality of it. So like I said, there's 25,000 active missing person cases, right? You could probably knock off 5,000 of those cases right now if we just had a grant that funded all the running of the DNA that's sitting on coroner shelves or medical examiner shelves right now. How about that? That's a start. You know what I mean? You could start, and listen, there's never closure. There's never getting closure of the loss of a loved one. We say you start the grieving process properly, right? Is kind of how that works. So if there's DNA sitting on shelves right now, because it's not like you or we're going to spit into a cup like 23andMe. I found a sister on 23andMe. You know what I mean? So I'm actually, we're at the wedding today, but when it comes, so it's not like one of those tests where it's $100, $150, $200, whatever they cost, right? It's when bones are found, you know what I mean? And the acidification happens on those bones because of heat and the dryness and stuff like that. Now you got to start doing really expensive DNA testing to pull the DNA from that stuff or the remains. And, companies like Othram, for instance, they do amazing work. You'll see them at CrimeCon. You got Kristen talking about some of the work that they're doing and stuff like that. And they love helping with cold cases, and they'll do whatever they can. But there's so many samples of DNA around the country that's just sitting on a shelf somewhere because there's not enough money to pay for that. And you got families that can start that grieving process and learn to heal now that they have at least some answers. And things like that can make the difference, right? Because look at the impact that can have on children. You have families that are consistently looking for years. Not that they're, not helping their other children, but we had other kids too. And some of the best advice I got was from John Walsh, and he turned around and he said, he was talking to me and my wife, and he's like, listen, your kids are going to be hurting. And they're not going to want to come to you with that hurt because they think that you're hurting too much as it is, because they see that. So they're going to hold that in, internalize that. And you don't want them to do something that you're not prepared for them to do. So you're going to want to go talk to them and make sure that it's okay for them to come to you. And we took that to heart. It made so much sense to us. And that we ran to them and had a talk with both my boys and hey, listen, I know Nikki did with her girls, and her son, listen, we want to talk, and you'd hurt us more by not coming to us. You know what I mean? And so stuff like that was really impactful and stuff. But you see things like that happen with families, and that's why it's so important to have access to those resources. Because you can have boots on the ground. I mean, Gabby's story, Wyoming, she was found in Wyoming. Brian drove all the way to Florida. She could have been anywhere in between. You got 2,500 miles. That's a lot, right? So to have that many boots on the ground can make that difference. So, and then there's no jurisdictional issues. I mean, stuff like that can really make the impact on seeing if someone's found or not.
How important is it? Say someone happens to know something, even if, and you never really know what it is. It could be something so small. Someone was acting strange, like that tip. We don't know where it's going to come from, but we know that there's a suspect out there, if not more. And how important is it for the family to get the answer? It must eat at you until you know what happened to your loved one.
Listen, from my experience, and we only dealt with it for 10 days, kind of 11 because it took a while to get it reported, but irrelevant. It killed us. So when I hear stories like Savannah's and the Nancy story, or the Daniel Robinson, or I've gotten the honor of speaking with Beth Holloway, Natalie Holloway's, mother, the strength it takes to do that. I mean, Natalie Holloway was missing for 20 years. We were sitting at a restaurant, and Gabby had already been found at that point, and there was a blonde girl with her back to me, and she just kind of had that stature of the way Gabby was built, and I just wanted her to turn around so bad, and I know it was irrational, you know what I mean, because we had the answers at that point. So I can't imagine 20 years of that. You know what I mean? Daniel Robinson missing for 5 years already. I can't imagine stuff like that. So I can't fathom the strength it takes to do months of it. We did 10, 11 days, and that killed me. I mean, look at me. I'm old now. I was happy, before, and now I look like this. So I can't imagine the strength it takes to go on. And then for Savannah to have to put the smile on your face, it's such a short, distance in time, for the audience and the stuff for her job. Listen, hats off to that woman and to the family, because it takes strength to have to do that, and not talk about what it is that you're trying to do, which is, I'm sure a lot of people want to talk about, but she's trying to do a job, so it's got to be very difficult for her. And my hat's off to her and the family for doing what it is that they do.
What is your advice for that family?
Stay the course. If you have an inclination or you're looking for some help, just keep doing what you're doing. Reach out, talk to people. Excuse me. Go on, shows like yours and talk about your mother's case, because eventually, hopefully, someone will come forward and say something, because it could be that one difference. Again, you had Jen Bethune and her family that were on a bus, because they were traveling and stuff like that. And she just happened to have the video of Gabby's van. And then the FBI had a good sense of where Gabby was at that point. They were in that area anyway. But she really gave a pinpoint location of where the last time the van was parked before it was driven out of that park. So it really helped, pinpoint it. And the day after Gabby was found, it snowed. And if it snowed, you wouldn't have found her at that point, right? So time can, play a factor in it. So just keep staying the course, keep doing what you're doing. And I understand you put on the face, for the TV and stuff like that. And I respect the hell out of that. But it's okay to let it down a little bit and feel that impact. I'm sure that happens on set from little things, maybe a smell, maybe a conversation that triggers her a bit. And she's just learning to rein that in. It's difficult. It's something that you have to learn.
Yeah, our heart goes out to them, and our hearts are still with your family. How are you guys doing?
We're doing all right. We're really busy. Tara and Nikki use Gabby's Voices program that they both go around talking to high schools and colleges, and pointing out red flags. And because as a country, I have to say it this way, painting with a broad brush, we don't do a good job of domestic violence education in this country. There are pockets which are fantastic, and schools will tell you we have this comprehensive program, and then really what they're doing is they're popping on a video, and then the teacher's going on their phone, and then the kids are going on their phone, and no one learned anything. There's a 45-minute video. I don't know. Can you become well-versed in a 45-minute video? Probably not. We need to do a better job of education when it comes to domestic violence. And it can start young. Like, it doesn't have to start in seniors in high school. Like, you could start in, late elementary school, proper friendships, bullying, stuff along those lines, and then build on that, right? Once you start getting to 7th and 8th grade, jealousy, snapping phones out of someone's hand because of a message, that you might have texted somebody else, like things start like that to happen. And then you start getting into high school, you start seeing the coercive control, and the jealousy really start to take impact and stuff like that. So there are ways that you can continually educate and teach some of the red flags and indicators of domestic violence. And then if we did that properly as a country, we would take that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 guys to 1 in 4 women and then 1 in 5 women. You know what I mean? That could really be the difference.
How do we get involved?
You can go to the GabbyPetitoFoundation.org, this page that you have up right there, and you'll see, about and the Alliance and stuff like that, where we have different programs. If you want to help, in terms of immediate or just, monetarily, we have again, you can donate. It says donate right there. You have this picture where you have us golfing. I think I was golfing barefoot. I golf barefoot, by the way. I just want to let you know that. I don't do the foo-foo golf. I don't take golf seriously. To me, it's therapy. My wife made me go to therapy after all this, and it was by far amazing. It was definitely needed. I'll tell you that. And I think everyone should. But she said, what's your happy place? The beach was mine, feet in the sand. But golf courses always made me feel calm. So I play golf, and I like to be grounded. So that's why I play golf barefoot. Anyway, but we're doing a golf outing that's going to help domestic violence education and prevention. So when I said Nikki and Tara travel the country for high schools, they don't charge high schools. They go to the high schools for free. So this is what that's going to help towards, is teaching kids not to fall into the same pitfalls of domestic violence.
Joe Petito, you are amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And I really hope that your mission continues, because you're helping so many people.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I thank you very much, Matt. Listen, we're going to get together in Vegas, and we'll have a good evening out there in Vegas. It'll be a fun time.
That's right, at CrimeCon. If you would like to learn more about the Gabby Petito Foundation, please find the link in my show notes below. Also, if you have any information in the case of missing Nancy Guthrie, please call authorities. Call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. There's the reward money. You can remain anonymous. In the meantime, I'll keep you posted on this case, so please hit the subscribe. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.